Hi, this is Rolando Rodriguez, co-founder of Trill Multicultural, and you are watching ACC's Fashion Hour.
My name is Nina Means. I'm the director here, and we are so excited to bring you this next talk on fashion brand storytelling. I want to go over just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. So this is a program that was started with the City of Austin, as well as Gerber Technology, which is a 50-year industry veteran industry for apparel and software and hardware manufacturing equipment. We really are looking at opportunities to continue our partnership with them, and so it's really important for us to be able to show you all of the different things that we've got available here. So as we're talking about various topics here for Fashion Hour, we're also going to be introducing ideas around our coursework that's available, as well as other opportunities for workshops and master classes. So if you are following us on Instagram, you want to check out at ACC Fashion Incubator. Follow us there. If you are taking pictures or video today and you tag us, we will also repost on our stories. So be sure to tag hashtag ACC Fashion Incubator, hashtag ACC Fashion, and we'd love to repost any of your stories or video that you're doing for us today. We did want to go ahead and just introduce our topic, fashion brand storytelling. There's some of you who may not be as aware of what that is or how does that contribute to how we purchase product, how we interact with brands. But this is something that we really wanted to take a moment to unpack with a company that is doing an incredible job with really meeting customers where they are. I am here with Rolando Rodriguez, and he is the co-founder of Trill Multicultural. Trill is an incredible company that I'm actually going to allow you to talk more about, how you landed on this incredible model, how you're reaching, brands and companies with really authentic engagement for product as well as services. So we're going to get into a little bit more about this, but I wanted to just take a second to allow Rolando to tell us more about how did you get started? Where did this all come from? And then we're going to have to really unpack what is brand storytelling. So let's start at the beginning. Rolando.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Nina. It means a lot to be here, and I'm a big admirer of the work that you're doing here at the Fashion Incubator.
Thank you.
My career story really lies at the intersection of journalism, advocacy, and corporate America. Those are three, I think, areas of the professional world that sometimes live very much apart from each other, but they live in close proximity to me as it relates to my story. I'm passionate about storytelling because of journalism. I'm passionate about social justice issues because of my career in advocacy. And I'm passionate about corporate America because of its influence on people. And so that's really where kind of my career background is. I started Trill Multicultural with two other individuals, Nicole Valadez and David Ramirez, for a very simple reason. And that reason was to help brands tell effective stories when engaging multicultural consumers. I felt that there was an opportunity to be more authentic, more cutting edge, and to help corporations understand our communities a bit better, how we make decisions. And that's important because when you have people that have culture rooted in their lives, every decision we make is through the lens of our culture, of our experiences. And sometimes when you are encountering corporations that lack diversity inside of it, corporations or companies like Trill Multicultural can come in and help them make better decisions and build better programs and write better communications so that people feel like they get them.
Absolutely. I think it's so important, for us to really think about how brands are talking to the customer. I think that, before I get into that, I wanted to talk a little bit more about some of the brands that you guys have actually done this kind of work for. This is from your website here with the Atlanta Music Project, but just because I really believe the audience loves to see the connection to, celebrity, and, could you tell us a little bit about what this was and where this came from, and then we'll
Yeah,
kind of dig
sure.
it back into,
Absolutely.
where we started.
At the heart of what we do, we are very much your traditional marketing and advertising communications agency. We look a lot like any of the agencies that you would see here in Austin, right? We do internal communications, external communications, social media, creative, all these buzz terms that we use in the marketing industry. But at the heart of what we do is we help brands tell stories through those marketing and communications disciplines. One of the things that we've really honed in on is corporate social responsibility. And one of the things I noticed in my life is that the bravado that comes with corporations that decide to go help communities through a certain need or through a certain crisis. And I think the original reason that corporations started doing corporate social responsibility work, community work, is to show folks that they care. I think that started to get diluted, and corporations started to do it in such a way where folks, I think, interpreted corporations showing off. And so we wanted to disrupt the corporate social responsibility space, Nina. We wanted to come in and help corporations not be the heroes in the story, but to create heroes in communities.
That's amazing.
And so our executions with corporate social responsibility is about orchestrating things that have never been done before and that could never be thought of before. And so one of our clients, Cricket Wireless, headquartered in Atlanta, was really passionate about music education, right? And so when they said, we really want to make a statement in Atlanta, because the company was acquired by ACCTV and relocated from San Diego into Atlanta, so they needed to make a statement that they cared about the city. And so we worked with the Atlanta Music Project, which is an organization that takes music education into impoverished urban areas. And so they primarily impact African American students that want to learn the violin, that want to learn the cello, and it's free music education.
Wow.
And so one of the things we did is we brought R&B legend Monica and the Atlanta Music Project together to perform. And for us, that is what you would call experiential marketing, community-based marketing. But really what it was is a story that was told to a bunch of students that they matter, that they matter on a big stage.
Yeah.
And so for us as a company, we seek to make sure that those stories are told to people that may not believe that they matter or may not believe that they have a future. And when you wield corporate resources, when a corporation entrusts you to take their money and to do something special with it, it's an incredible responsibility. And so we do things like that.
I think that's fantastic. One of the things that I really love about this is, one, you're making kind of some unlikely connections between Cricket Wireless and music education. That's not something that you would normally think to connect together, but if someone has a specific interest within the company on a specific issue, here's an opportunity to help and to reach into a community that is kind of really indigenous to where they're moving into. Atlanta is really well known for their music scene.
That's
You've got an incredible network of celebrity that you can really kind of tap into. And now this is an opportunity to augment the brand, but to align alongside of something that's an authentic need. Students who really want to see something. So I think that as we're talking about this, it's really, we'll start to kind of draw the comparisons and similarities in fashion. But I think where we were really wanting to start is saying, there's some unlikely combinations that are created in that corporate social responsibility space. And just for all of our understanding, corporate social responsibility is really what companies are doing to, reach the community, or can you kind of help us unpack that a little bit?
Absolutely. I think corporations are doing it to differentiate themselves, right? So look at a telecom company like Cricket Wireless. They sell phones, they sell wireless service. So does T-Mobile, so does Metro PCS, so does AT&T, right? So does Verizon, right? So the lines of differentiation in terms of what a company can offer in terms of products and services is razor thin. So the only thing that really differentiates you in the marketplace is a story you tell. And when companies tell stories, they tell people what matters to them, right?
Absolutely.
That's powerful. And
It is.
yeah.
It is. This is another clip from, this is from the same Atlanta Music Project, and you
Yeah.
guys brought in T.I.
So, the Atlanta Music Project, Enrique Cortez, who is the founding principal of True Multicultural here in the audience, and, he's the head of corporate social responsibility for our agency. He really designed all of this, and,
Wow.
and I'm here representing his work. I think what's important is that they wanted to make an impact on music education, but writing a check wasn't enough, right? We needed to create a spectacle. We needed to create pomp and circumstance around this thing, right? And so we reached out to T.I., who was performing on a very legendary platform called NPR Tiny Desk. And it's this concert series held at the headquarters of National Public Radio. And folks like Adele and Dave Matthews have performed. T.I. was invited, and he wanted to do something special.
Wow.
And so we asked if he would be open to having the Atlanta Music Project back him up and put strings in place of 808 bass
Wow.
to his biggest hits. That was legendary because a lot of these kids had never been on a plane, and they flew to the nation's capital. We ensured that their time, their studio time, and their travel and their accommodations were covered by the brand, Cricket Wireless, and that they had an incredible experience. But T.I. was the hero in this, not Cricket Wireless.
Mm.
And so when we talk about corporate social responsibility, you'll see here that in this concert, the only place you see Cricket Wireless is on the T-shirts, right? But by their sheer affiliation with something like this, they're telling a story that Cricket had something to do with this.
Wow.
And that's important. And so
Right.
we're very careful and surgical on how we orchestrate this because, frankly, customers are just tired of folks coming in and saying, we're a great brand and we're here to save you. No, T.I.'s been working in the Black community in Atlanta for a far longer time than any of our clients. He's the person that deserves to be hero-made,
Got it.
and the brand benefits because of that.
Understood. So it's
Yeah.
really like, working through
Yeah.
really almost like, I don't know if gatekeeper is the right word, but, really an ambassador, someone who
Right.
already understands, it's from the community and understands the community.
You hit the nail on the head because culture is the currency, right? And I think that you can only tap into culture if you have the ambassador to culture,
Interesting.
right? And
Yeah.
that's really important, I think, for brands to understand, is that you just can't walk in and say that you care about somebody anymore. You have to have someone vouch for you, and you
Yeah.
have to demonstrate that inside your corporation, on your boardroom, that multiculturalism is infused. Because great corporate social responsibility is wonderful, right? We love those things. But when you're walking into a Black community, it's important to demonstrate that it's not just in your visuals and in your marketing and in the way you communicate. What's also important is what your corporation looks like.
Absolutely. I wanted to ask you, because we've been kind of talking around the topic for a while now,
Yeah.
storytelling. What is that? Like, and what does that mean
Yeah.
whenever it's, we're talking about a brand and,
Yeah.
how did you even get into doing storytelling? I mean, everyone's kind of
Yeah.
really wondering how does that work?
My first job out of high school was at a local newspaper called the Herald Coaster, now the Fort Bend Herald. And my first job that I was assigned to was writing obituaries as an 18-year-old.
That's a story.
Right. And what it taught me was that there's a beginning, a middle, and end to everything. And so I became fascinated with the art of storytelling because I essentially was writing the last words, the last public words for people that I had never met. And I thought that was a really profound responsibility. I always knew that I loved stories and I was just fascinated by them. I used to, there's a newspaper in Houston called the Houston Post that's now discontinued. And my father was a mechanic, and I remember him sitting down just, laced in like, oil and, and stuff. And I used to lay out all the newspapers across the living room. I used to read them. So I think I became ingrained with storytelling at a very early moment. I was working for ACCTV in Atlanta, Georgia, as the head of corporate sponsorships for one of their big subsidiaries. And I decided that I didn't want my fingerprint on the world to be, a VP of something, right? And so I was reading this book called A Million Miles in a Thousand Years by Donald Miller. He's actually from Houston, Texas, Alvin to be more specific. And he wrote a book about the art of storytelling. And essentially, storytelling has seven very essential elements. You have a hero who wants something, who encounters problems, who meets a guide, who helps the hero solve those problems by giving them a plan of action, calls them to action, which results in either success or failure. That's essentially what a story is.
Yeah.
And what Donald Miller found was that very simple, very easy to understand blueprint of what stories look like have been used to get you to buy movie tickets, have been used to get you to buy theater tickets, have been used to get you to sit down and read very thick books. And if corporations could leverage that model of storytelling, then they could probably get you to buy their products and services too.
Right.
And so, used responsibly, I think that the storytelling is extremely powerful. And one of the things I learned, Enrique and I went up to Nashville when we first started the company, and we drove up there. It was 11 hours, and we were both, not sure what our futures looked like. And we studied under Don, and one of the things that was very profound, I won't go into all 7 elements, but one of the things that was very profound is that every great story starts with a problem, right? You never go to a movie and folks are, everything's great in life. Every story starts with a problem. And so essentially, people buy things to solve problems. And the best brands that storytell really well identify your problems. They identify an internal problem that you have that is rooted in an insecurity, doubt, or fear, right? And this is being done in men's fashion really, really well right now, Nina.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Yeah, so for instance, men's fashion is very interesting because, I go to Macy's or anywhere else and I get a shirt and I put it on. The sleeves might be too long, or the area around the gut is too tight, but everything else fits amazing. Well, what's happening right now is that startups are starting to create tailored clothing, t-shirts and shirts for men that you answer a few questions about your height, your weight, your preferences through a survey, and they send you things that fit perfectly, right? But the marketing is what's interesting.
Tell
right?
me about it.
The marketing is about tapping into an internal problem of not feeling good in your clothes and not looking good at work or on a date, right? This is an insecurity, doubt, or fear that's rooted in, and insecurity, doubt, or fear actually happen through questions, not through statements. Am I worthy? Right? Do I look good? Right? And so internal problems are used to help people buy things. Donald Miller asked me one day when I was training under him, he says, do you have a daughter? And I said, yeah, I have a daughter. And he says, well, do you take her to get clothes? I was like, yeah, I take her school shopping, and I didn't have a lot growing up, so I'm really excited about taking her to all these stores and buying her all the best clothes. And they said, why do you think you do that? And I said, because I want her to have the best things. He says, no, that's not why you do it. He says, it's through an internal problem. The internal problem is, am I a good father? And that hit me in the chest because he was absolutely right. I want to be a great dad. And that has nothing to do with my daughter. It happens to do with very selfish reasons of why I do the things that I do.
Wow.
Now, does my daughter have something to do with it? Absolutely has something to
course.
do with it. But at the root of the human brain, we are selfish and we are wired for survival, right? So if I ask you, Lena, how many chairs are in this room? Do you know?
I think roughly.
Well, you would know, but most people in here wouldn't
Most
know.
people know.
But
You're
if I
right.
asked them where the exits were,
Yes.
everyone would know instinctively where the exits were. There's probably one here and there's probably one there. Our brains are wired for survival. We only care about the things that we care about that are going to impact our story. When brands begin to understand this, they understand that it's not about getting the consumer in their story. It's about integrating themselves in the customer story.
Absolutely. And I just want to stop you there because I think that is completely transformational about the way that we think about how we're building new brands, new product, new opportunities. Are we actually a part of our customer's story? Does the customer align with us because we are aligning with them? And I think that, what you had mentioned before, just about the questions that it comes up, I think sometimes we're kind of landing on these absolutes as opposed to this range of feelings that could come from, am I a good father? Am I a good mom? Am I a worthy, an interest on a date? Would someone
Right.
be interested in me
Right.
wearing this? Does this make me feel powerful?
Right.
Does this make me feel in charge?
Right.
And a lot of the product that we're purchasing is to underscore those needs,
Right.
and that makes so much sense.
Yeah, it's the story a brand tells. 5 years ago when I first started to get a little bit of change in my pocket, I went into this store that I could never afford anything in. It was called John Barbados, and they didn't treat me very well. And so I bought something out of spite to show the people in that store that a man of color could buy something expensive. And it wasn't until then that they took my information that I provided them and started texting me and tried to help me customize my experience with John Barbados. And so I didn't step foot in that place for 2 more years.
Yeah.
And I walked back in there a couple years later. And I don't know what happened internally at John Barbados, but I can tell you that for people of color that are interested in high fashion, the internal problem of am I worthy is persisting every time you walk into a store.
Interesting.
Because you don't know if you're going to be helped or not. That's a reality.
It is a reality.
And so I walked in there, and something happened at John Barbados, and there were a lot of guys that looked like me.
Yes.
That didn't look like, like someone that was going to ignore me, right? And that could be someone of any color.
Right.
Okay? They helped me. And they helped customize my journey and build my wardrobe. And I feel good about the brand.
It changes everything.
It changed everything. So the experience of buying clothes was also important. And that's important in fashion. It's important for fashion brands to understand that you have to treat customers well. I walked into John Barbados yesterday to buy something for this event.
Is this the jacket?
They said, you need to step out. You already have everything that you need in your wardrobe that you've already bought. Let me tell you what you're going to wear.
Wow.
And
They were right.
they were right. Right? I already had everything I need. John Barbados is going to get a lot of money from me.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, I would say so. I mean, the fact that they were able to tell you what you already had in your closet and knew that you were already
Right.
prepared for what you were wanting to go into is, amazing. But they were also kind of putting back the confidence back to you. You're like, no, you're already ready. You're ready to go.
They wanted to know who was in the room, what the event looked like,
Wow.
so that they could understand whether I already had what I needed to
Interesting.
wear. Right? They inserted themselves in my story,
Wow.
not the other way around.
Huge.
Yeah.
Because a lot of brands would have just taken the opportunity to sell you something else.
I was ready.
You were ready, and you were ready to go.
I was going to drop my light money.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you didn't drop your light money, but
No, I'm joking.
but you look great.
Maybe.
This jacket's
I don't know.
fantastic.
Thank you.
Very cool. The boots. I'm telling you, the boots.
Yeah. But,
But let's talk about kind of this brand storytelling in action. Your hero. We've got the guide. Can you tell us a little bit more? I've got the clip, and so we're going to cut it into the clip in just a minute. But can you kind of set the stage about what happened here with Foot Action and this female fighter?
yeah, Foot Action was, we actually courted the Foot Action client, Lorena Serrano, who's the brand manager. For
And she's
this.
also on our advisory board.
She's also on the advisory
Thank you for
board.
the introduction.
Yeah, we courted her here in Austin, actually, during South by Southwest. And one of the really profound questions that she asked me was, should brands get involved with Cinco DeMayo? Right? And I think that's a really, really big question because Cinco DeMayo is a really, I think it's a pitfall for a lot of brands to fall into stereotypes and appropriations. And it offends a lot of people. So you have to be really, really careful on how you do it. We won the business, and we were able to execute a Cinco de Mayo campaign for Foot Action that included content development, digital content development, experiential marketing. I'll tell you a little bit about what we did to their retail space in LA.
Yeah, I've got a clip from it too.
But one of the things that I think they did is they did a partnership with Golden Boy Promotions. And Golden Boy Promotions is owned by Oscar De La Hoya,
Wow, that's a big
the
deal.
boxing gold medalist. And he offered 2 of his boxers. And so what they did is they did an apparel collaboration T-shirts with a world championship boxer by the name of Canelo Alvarez. And so we did a commercial for those line of T-shirts that were made exclusively for LA. The other opportunity we had was just to storytell the life of one of their boxers. And so Lorena Serrano, who's a Latina from East LA, chose not to go with a male boxer, but with their first female signee, who was a woman by the name of Marlon Esparza out of Houston, Texas, coincidentally. Wow. And she was the first U.S. medalist in the Olympics, right? And so, boxing for women has been outlawed in various parts of the world as of recently. And so it wasn't until, I think, the 2012 or 2012 Olympics when women first boxed competitively. And so Marlon was the first U.S. boxer to ever medal. Wow. And so that story had been told over and over again by brands. She's also sponsored by Nike. We wanted to go a different route. And I'll tell you a little about that when we cue the...
Okay, let's cue it up.
Yeah.
I've been called crazy all my life. When I thought I was going to go to the Olympics, you're crazy. When I thought I was going to be signed by a promotional company as big as Golden Boy, you're crazy. Everything that I've ever done for myself was called crazy. I decided to have my baby at the beginning of my career. People were telling me that it was a bad idea. Sometimes when you just do things differently, people don't understand, and they understand later.
Put me through a testament. I'm ripping through that flesh of them. I'm on it, plus I'm SPM. They can't believe I'm Mexican. This here, baby, I feel like Mike in the 80s. They say the South don't show no love. Rock me here, baby, I'm the most popular baby. Like the rock me here, baby, say my.
I really want to go down as one of the best female fighters of all time. Yeah, I really just want all the belts.
Marlon Esparza was advised at 5-0. She had just started her professional boxing career, not to have a child in the middle of her career. And Marlon is someone that is defiant to traditional norms, and so she decided to have her child, and trained through her 9 months of pregnancy, and then got back in the ring about 2 or 3 weeks after she had the baby. Wow. And she also carries her child into the gym and trains, as you can see. We thought that this was an incredible opportunity to display a story about motherhood, not about a boxer, but about a woman that wants her family and wants her career at the same time, and should be able to have that. I thought that it was it was a story that I think a lot of people could identify with. A lot of women could identify with, regardless of their color. So this is part of a Cinco DeMayo campaign, but in no place in this video did we talk about her being a Latina. But the brand definitely spoke to Latinas across the country. I think all women across the country, if they saw this piece.
I would agree. I feel like this is something that, is, to your point, it's like you don't, underscore, her ethnicity. However, you can't deny, her background, but her story is translatable, and it's relatable. But where it comes back to foot action, when I was talking with Lorena, she was telling me about how they were actually having an issue where all of their medium sizes, they only had menswear in terms of what the product was available on the floor. And so they were noticing that all the smallest sizes were disappearing, and that they were like, so who's buying up all the mediums, who's buying up all the smalls? And they were finding that they had a female customer who was coming in and shopping the menswear collection but needed these sizes. And so the need to actually expand into a women's line in store was now absolutely imperative. And so they're missing a ton on the bottom line by not having that available to her. Yeah. So now enter Marlon Esparza, it's like, wait, Foot Action has something for me too? That's it wasn't something that, as a woman that you're looking for clothing or workout wear or athleisure or anything like that from Foot Action in the past.
It's so true, and I think the lines of differentiation that I spoke to earlier, I can go buy the Nike Air Jordan shoe anywhere. I can buy it at Macy's, I can buy it at Nordstrom's, I can buy it at Shoe Palace, I can buy it at Foot Action, I
Right.
can buy it at Foot Locker. The only difference between those companies from a consumer's perspective is the story you tell.
Right.
So if you're telling stories like this, I think that you're going to attract more of this dominant emerging force of the female entrepreneur, the Latina buyer that corporate America so wants. And so, but you have to have people internally to make those decisions. I don't know if Marlon Esparza ever shows up if Lorena Serrano is not at Foot Action,
Right.
right? And that's really important. I don't know if Marlon Esparza is chosen to be the center of this campaign had it not been a woman making the decision. Multiculturalism and diversity right then and there shows you that it'll impact your bottom line.
Absolutely.
This is not a social responsibility anymore. It's imperative to the bottom line.
Absolutely. And I think that, as we're looking at diversity and, up into the ranks, female diversity, ethnic diversity, it's really where people are making these bottom line decisions, but it's also having a far-reaching impact. I remember we were talking a few days ago, and you're just saying how much more impact you're able to have and replicate through various corporate entities by being able to provide what Trill does to, Cricket and AT&T and Foot Action and, a lot of other larger brands who want very much to connect, but don't really know how, and so now you can really be intentional, surgical, and really land the message in a way that, the customer can really hear it and know it's really for them.
That's right. And I think as we talk about this next video, I think that's important because to go back to the question, how do we do Cinco de Mayo the right way? One of the things I told Lorena, and I didn't have to really school her, but the brand is, the Cinco de Mayo has become kind of like Pride or St. Patrick's Day. It's become flooded with companies that want to play in that sandbox. I as a company will not be part of anything that is disrespectful to my community. I want to be empowering of the community. I want people to feel like they're appreciated and valued. And so, we talked through, we were inside of an Austin taqueria, inside during South by Southwest, and I said, what does Cinco de Mayo mean to you and I right now? What does it really mean? And it's not that we're not taking tequila shots. We're not at the bars. We really anticipate Cinco de Mayo because it is a unofficial boxing holiday, and boxing is a sport that we love in the Latino community. And so it's a time where champions south of the border travel to the bright lights of Las Vegas and sit on U.S. soil and fight some of the other biggest names in boxing. And it's an opportunity for us to huddle inside of homes, whether it's our tia or our grandmother or our father's or mother's homes, see our friends, see our family, barbecue, get food, huddle inside of a really small living room, and just connect around a sporting event. That's very American, but it's also very Latino during Cinco de Mayo. And so we had this wild idea. I said, what if we gut your retail space and turn it into a Mexican living room from the 1980s?
Wow.
And,
what did they say?
It was a hard sell. Because Lorena, the problem with having really big ideas when it comes to multicultural marketing is you have to sell it to people that may not understand your community.
Right.
But she got it done.
Wow.
And the folks at Foot Action supported it wholeheartedly.
That's incredible.
Right. And so it says a lot about about Foot Action. It says a lot about the brand. And so what we did is we threw an old school fight party. That's what we called it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So maybe we should just watch the clip and see how.
Yeah, again, I'm representing the work of our co-founder Nicole Valadez is here in the front row.
Excellent.
Enrique Cortez heads not only corporate social responsibility but spiritual marketing. This is really their work. I'm privileged to represent it. I think you should run the video.
Excellent. Let's run it.
I think it's a really basic understanding that corporations who are very, very large want to look small right now.
Yes.
They want to look small, and that makes fashion designers that work out of here a really, really hot commodity. Because you
Absolutely.
can look really, really small if you work with folks that are just starting out and are extremely talented and have something to offer the world.
That's awesome.
I think a lot of folks, a lot of creatives that create art, I find them to be folks that don't like to talk about their personal story sometimes. Like they want their art to kind of represent their talents and to put it out there. But I really feel like folks should talk about what they've been through in life and the things that they've gone through, what inspired them to start in the fashion industry.
Right.
Because when you tell your story, it's easy to find people that connect with it. Like I buy things all the time because I can identify with the story this individual is telling me,
Sure.
or because the fashion is representative of something that I care about. Not necessarily because I want to wear it, because it represents me. And those are two different things.
That's very true.
And so, you know, obviously, I'm not going to go as elementary as talking about social media, but I think that folks need to document the work that they do. You know, one of the things that Donald Miller told me was he was trying to get his carpet cleaned, and he was choosing between two carpet cleaning companies. One of the companies had a really, really fancy website, and the other one didn't. But he chose the one that didn't because he explained the process, right? And so he felt more invested in the company because they had a science behind what they do.
Huh. Okay.
And so when I talk about that in the realm of fashion, because we often see what is on the racks, but we don't know what happened behind it.
Right. How did it get there?
How did it get there?
Yeah, I mean, blockchain and transparency in fashion is like so important right now, and people are like, but who did this? Where did this come from?
Yeah. Whose hands touched this?
Right.
How many jobs did it create?
Right.
Who was impacted? Those are the stories that need to be told by fashion designers, I think, on a more profound level. I think they're done by some of the best fashion designers. Maybe even some of the best fashion designers don't do it. I don't know. I'm not a fashion expert. I just know that story works.
Right.
You know?
Right. No, you're absolutely right. So in terms of the story, like, I think that if you're thinking about sharing your sustainability story and you got the hero and the guide and, you're like, how do I share what this problem is? How do I connect, what I'm doing to the actual, I think I'm putting you on the spot a little bit here, so feel free. We're just going to have the conversation.
Let's do it.
But if a brand is going to translate these tools into what they've actually made themselves, like how do we help them make the leap? I mean, of course they could work with Trill Multicultural, we would always invite that, but if you're a brand new startup and you're learning how to do this for yourself, or at least kind of the first toe dip in, like how do they start to do that? How do they get their story out there in a, kind of anchored on these principles?
One of the mind shifts that I think everybody who's selling something, whether you sell pencils or you sell t-shirts or you sell dresses, is that we cannot afford not to be marketers. Everyone has to be a marketer. You cannot displace yourself from that responsibility anymore because the power is not within you. It's within your channels.
Right.
You don't need anybody, you don't need a retail store to sell anything that you make or that you create.
It's true.
And so from a very technical perspective, like we knew that we had to tell our story. And so from a very like nuts and bolts perspective, I think that every designer should learn Pro Tools, how to shoot video, and how to edit it.
Okay.
Because that is like the main challenge that everyone I see today has.
Absolutely.
And it's like, and it's a very intimidating process to like shoot and edit your own video. It's extremely intimidating. But I'll tell you something. We have a dedicated videographer who's the principal of video storytelling for us. He's sitting right here. His name is Manuel Beltran. He's done work for all the major brands. What if I told you that 9 months ago he'd never picked up a camera?
Wow. I mean, are you talking about this foot action video that we
He
just
did,
watched?
yeah,
He
he
did
did that.
that and had not picked up a
Never
camera in
picked up
9
a camera
months.
in his life.
Wow.
Didn't know Pro Tools.
Wow.
Do you know how he learned?
How?
YouTube.
All right.
Education's been democratized. It's
Completely.
there. It's there. And so anybody, I don't care if you go to school here or you don't, I don't care what you sell. Learn how to shoot and edit your own video, because if you can do that, you can tell your story. And you can tell your story in beautiful ways. You can tell your story of how your mom inspired you to make this certain piece, or how this piece is inspired by someone who died.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
And so there are really beautiful ways, and there are really beautiful reasons of why things are made, why art is created. It's the story that people can identify with that makes them buy it.
Right. Absolutely.
You know, and creates loyalty, creates customer loyalty.
I'm going to ask this question to the audience once we cut over to Q&A, but I'm going to want for a few of you to share, like, what are some of the stories that have made you actually purchase something? It could be anything. It could be your phone. It could be, a dress that you got, a shirt that was on sale. Like, what was it that made you make the purchase? What was this? What was the story? Why did you feel like you needed it? But I really want to hear from the audience about that whenever we open up for Q&A here in just a second.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think that when you start to understand the art of storytelling, you understand what brands are trying to do to you. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's like, sometimes it's a good thing and it's a bad thing. It depends on who's behind, who's behind the curtain.
Right. You're like, I know you're pulling on my heartstrings. Stop doing that.
Yeah. Like Match.com does a wonderful job of tapping into insecurity, right? They walk around a park and they grab a woman who's single and probably is really, really happy with her life. And they said, hey, are you on Match.com? No. Are you on any dating sites? No. How about your friends? Yeah, actually, my friend just got married. So what are you waiting for? My friend, right? So what's the internal problem? Am I worthy of a man? To me, that's not a great manipulation. I don't want my daughter at, she's 17, she's sitting here in the audience, but I don't want her 5 years from now, wondering whether she needs a man in her life. Right? I want her traveling the world. I want her dating and having a great time. Right? Yeah. I don't want Match.com to get to my daughter.
Right. It's an effective story that they're telling, but you're right. You can always still make the decision, right? The customer.
And it doesn't matter what I want; it matters what she wants. But
of
still,
course. Well, of course, of course.
Yeah.
I'm going to see if we can cue up this video, and then we're going to cut over to. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're going to cut over to question and answer.
Wonderful.
Yeah, this video is really cool. Rolando sent me these links, and going through them, I had such a hard time choosing which ones we were going to show during Fashion Hour. But the female fighter, and then this one was just so compelling. So.
Yeah, this is a foot action store in downtown Los Angeles.
Okay. This is such an incredible way to bring product to, a customer in a way that they identify with, they believe in it, they want to support it, they want to talk about it.
Yeah,
This is
yeah.
an experience that kind of has the potential to live outside of those retail walls.
Yeah, this was a story of bringing people and transporting them back in time, showing them that their culture mattered, and celebrating Cinco de Mayo the way we do it, not the way that Corona tells us to.
Right.
And in the process, they bought product.
I saw that embedded. So there were a few things that I really appreciated. Was that the sale happened. I saw the sale about, I think,
Yeah,
halfway through
yeah,
somewhere.
yeah.
But it wasn't like the focal point, but I saw that people were buying. And
Right.
then I saw kind of this image over here with foot action, but it was, so much a part of the party.
Yeah.
It just didn't
Yeah.
feel like I was getting sold every 5 seconds.
Right.
It was really just kind of a part of the moment.
Right, right. It felt very genuine. I think people wanted to buy product because the brand invested in the culture and did it the right way. I mean, we our vendors that we used, we made sure that we had a women-based team of designers that knew how to put that place together because, we knew if our grandmothers or our aunts or our moms are the ones that were in charge of the decorative process in our homes. So that had to be the case here as well.
Yeah.
You know?
It's a completely authentic representation.
Right, it's an authentic representation. So every
Absolutely.
vase or couch that was chosen by a woman.
That's
Right,
awesome.
that's important. And I think so that process for us was really important. So it was a home run for the brand. They had never seen their space utilized in that way. I think it was just the most successful event they ever had in that space.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Well, with that, I want to go ahead and open up for some Q&A. I know we've had some kind of ebb and flow with the audience. We do have a microphone. We are live streaming this event, so if you don't speak into the microphone, we can't hear you. So we would love for you to, we'll go ahead and open it up now for a few questions. I think we've got one down front.
Thank you. I'm curious to hear, how do you think we go about translating that in-store experience storytelling to online? I mean, I'm of course going to take to heart what you said about the video and the Pro Tools, but how do you do that in an online and make it authentic and relatable to your client? And you wanted to know what compelled me to buy something?
Yes.
And it's something I don't think I'm ever going to wear. But I was at a store in Georgetown, D.C. area, and it's a brand called Ministry of Supply, and it's a
Yes.
bunch of MIT geeks, and they design fabric. And so I had to buy something so I could have this very special, unique fabric. But the colors are blah, and the style is blah, but I wanted to have that. But I do want to hear about online storytelling.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's funny, it's like the story you tell, I think, to customers, and I'm going to speak through, I'm going to stay in my space in terms of multiculturalism. And, Lorena Serrano at Foot Action just did a deal and bought a bunch of product from this independent designer out of LA called Bella Doña. And Bella Doña really brought back lowrider, chola fashion back into the mainstream. So you see the Kardashians.
I actually pulled a couple
Yeah.
images for you.
So you see the Kardashians wearing a lot of this, but they're the ones that really brought it back. And I think that they're going to be doing kind of an online pop-up. So I think the story, so when you look at Foot Action, would you expect something like this to be on there? I know I wouldn't. And, I don't think I'd ever go to a Foot Action website and think I'd see something like this. I think the story we tell is not just in the content that we create, but in the operational choices that we make to buy product and the vendors that we choose to partner with. I don't think Belladonna ever thought that they'd be working with an apparel company like Foot Action that sells, Nike shoes, but here we are. And so I think that Foot Action's going to win big time when the community finds out about this, because this culture is just not important to the Hispanic community. It's already transcended into the mainstream. And so they've empowered, I think, 3 Latina designers to be on a general market platform. I think that sends a really strong message. Thank you for your question. Yeah.
In the back.
Yeah, I was curious, just seeing all the thought and time. Can you tell us how long from the conception to the fight, how long does that process take? Is that a year? Is that 6 months? And also, what does something like that cost in real terms, real life?
Yeah, compared to what people do in South by Southwest, it was a very relatively cheap execution. Something like that can cost like $50,000 to $60,000. And brands come into Austin and drop, 6 figures very, very easily. So this was a bare bones budget, and we did a lot with it. So the party itself didn't cost $50,000. We did the entire campaign, all the video content, the experiential execution, customer sweepstakes to fly to the fight. All of that was done within that budget frame. I think what's interesting, when we pitched this, we were, I think, 2 or 3 weeks out of 1 month from Cinco DeMayo. And so Enrique Cortez and Nicole Valadez worked really, really hard with identifying the right vendor partners that would allow us to put together this concept. So it was done in 30 days.
Wow.
It was a monster. It was a monster. But when you're a small company, when you're like, 9-person agency, you do what it takes to get business. We're going up against the big boys. When you work with brands like AT&T, Cricket Wireless, Foot Action, you're going up against the largest agencies in the world. So your ideas better be freaking amazing. Because if you can't compete unless your ideas are better than theirs. It's the bottom line. This is a competitive industry, especially a place like Austin. You have 10 agencies that are doing incredible work, so I appreciate your question. Yeah.
All right, well, if we don't have any additional questions from the audience, we're going to go ahead and wrap up here. I am just so, I feel like there's so many different things that we can take away from, what brands can be doing to be able to authentically connect to their audience, identifying a hero. I think one thing that you told me earlier was, what was it about the hero and the product versus the product and the hero? Like, I'm going to completely misparaphrase this, but do you remember we had this conversation and you're like, sometimes the brand is really trying to swoop in and save the customer, but really it's about making the customer the hero.
I think the best brands out there that are doing really great work realize that they are not the hero in this story. Their customer's the hero. And they are the guide.
So much more eloquently put.
They are the guide in this story. And the guide, in storytelling, like when you look at movies and books, the guide exudes 2 things, empathy and authority, right? So if you look at Hunger Games or Karate Kid, the guide, right, Mr. Miyagi or Woody Harrelson in Hunger Games, they have 2 characteristics that also work when you're selling something. The empathy is that I have been where you've been, right? I know your pain. I know your struggle. And authority is I've solved your problems before, right?
Absolutely.
And so I think that it's important that brands start to think on that level.
I think it's perfect. I think it's the perfect place to stop. Thank you so much, Rolando
Thank you so much,
Rodriguez.
Nina.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you all for your time and attention.